Right now, we are spending enormously on the Iran war. They're asking for $1.6 trillion for our next military budget to make up for the failed missiles, the missiles that we're using on this failing war with Iran. It just kind of feels like this president and
we
prior
also have an
Republican
obligation to NATO to get up to 5% of our GDP.
That's
and
not
even that number would be less than 5%.
The president does not have a strong grasp on economics. I think that is pretty clear. But why is there nobody around the president that's telling him why this is not a great idea if he cares about American, cattle producers?
Yeah.
Hey guys, welcome back to Political Crossfire. Adam Mockler walked onto Abby Phillip's CNN panel and immediately went after a problem MAGA has a hard time explaining. Donald Trump keeps reversing his own economic policies and then trying to claim victory when the damage needs fixing. This time, the fight is over. Trump's tariffs, rising beef prices, the national debt, and massive spending on the Iran war. Mockler argues that Trump slapped huge tariffs on imported beef, watched prices become a problem, and is now turning around and bringing in foreign beef to lower those same prices. And when the conversation shifts to Trump's contribution to the national debt and his enormous military spending plans, the MAGA defense gets even harder to maintain. Do me a favor and subscribe to Political Crossfire. It really helps the channel grow. Now, let's get into this heated CNN NewsNight debate with Abby Phillip and see how it all unfolds.
For years, MAGA has slammed socialism and communism. But tonight, the face of the movement is announcing price controls. Yes, right here in America. That's in response to a crisis partly of his own making. Today, Donald Trump announced that he's negotiated a deal to lower beef prices by temporarily allowing beef to be imported into the U.S. without triggering high tariffs. Trump says that the imported beef will come at a 25% discount to current market prices. The cost of beef has skyrocketed amid a drop in the number of U.S. cattle, persistent consumer demand, and limits on cattle from Mexico, where ranchers are confronting a flesh-eating parasite. Now, Trump's 50% tariff on Brazil, a major beef exporter, are also making things worse. But as the president faces criticism within his own party for undercutting domestic beef production, he won't even say where this foreign beef is coming from.
Which countries did you make that deal with? What are the sources of the beef deal?
I don't want to say which countries, but there are a few countries, but they're going to be sending in the highest quality beef, and it's something that we need.
I guess by that answer, you should probably also be asking yourself, is this deal even a real thing if he won't tell you who's made it with him? But Pete, it's a double whammy. You got the tariffs, and then you're going to import temporarily a bunch of new beef and then discount it to American beef. That's wild, which is why the response from the cattle community has been explosive today.
Yeah, it's the right end goal, lowering prices, but at least based on what we know, it's the wrong path to get there. The biggest question, as you just pointed out, this beef coming from? Beef does not have the shelf life of Twinkies. This stuff doesn't last forever. So depending on where it's coming from, is it coming on a slow boat? Is it coming on planes? We don't know because the administration hasn't answered these questions. And some of it is also window dressing. 80% of the beef that's consumed in this country is produced here. And so now you're going to bring in beef. You're going to lower those prices. What's that going to do? What's that impact on prices of beef that is made here? How that's going to impact the bottom line?
It's putting more downward
a lot of
pressure
stuff that's going on there. But I do, to your point real quick, the American Farm Bureau Federation is among those groups, and they have been staunch supporters. Their members have been of this president. They have been with him every step of the way. And the very first words of the statement they put out was, quote, "Farmers and ranchers are extremely disappointed." That was a strong statement for them to make in this moment.
Yeah, Meriwether Farm says it's a betrayal. Zippy Duval, who's the president of the Farm Bureau, as you pointed out, said that that they are disappointed what he's doing. The National Cattlemen's Beef Association says no cow-calf producer in America is asking for increased imports. Again, I want to know. The president does not have a strong grasp on economics. I think that is pretty clear. But why is there nobody around the president that's telling him why this is not a great idea if he cares about American cattle producers?
Yeah, I want them to tell him just simple economics. If taking off the tariff lowers the prices, then putting on tariffs actually does increase prices, as we have been saying. And it's unfortunate because this is a consumer affordability problem. Selfishly, I need the price of beef to drop. I am a carnivore. We've got to get back to eating more beef. But this is really unfortunate for ranchers and for farmers. We've seen some of the highest foreclosures in the past few years. We saw Republicans from Montana and from Nebraska on the Republican side release pretty significant statements about their disappointment in this. I think it is the administration really undercutting a group of people that have been quite loyal to him from the beginning. And now I have to ask them, what did you gain from that loyalty to this president?
And I'm going to have to agree with you on this point. I think the ranchers absolutely do have reason to be upset about this, but we have to remember it's only a 90-day import valve. So I think if it goes longer than that 90 days, well, then they're really going to have something to complain about.
You know, I agree with what you guys said. I hate to say this, but I agree with what Pete Seat said this time. I think that what I find funny is that all of Trump's big magic policy announcements are just reversing prior policies that he put in place. So he put the highest tariffs on beef that we've ever seen in American history, and now he's having the sudden realization that he can artificially lower prices and import them from some unknown country. He's constantly saying that oil prices are dropping. The Strait of Hormuz is about to open it back up. It's like, dog, you're the one that literally effed this up in the first place. You screwed it up. You're the one that made the Strait of Hormuz close down. So I think in the position where we're in right now, it just feels like Trump is reversing his own policies and declaring victory. It's not really good.
Well, and to answer your question real quick, you mentioned the senator from Montana, Tim Sheehy. The American Farm Bureau Federation put it in their statement. They have been talking to the administration for over a year because the president has threatened this, I think, on 3 occasions. And they've said, don't do it. So people have been telling him, I don't know about within the White House, but allies have been saying, sir, do not do this. And he did it anyway.
And can we talk about
also just, I mean, first, this is the point that you're making in part, like the tariffs are the problem, okay? Rising prices are happening in part because he decided to arbitrarily slap tariffs on virtually the entire world and then carve out random carve-outs for different industries where they were able to get to him in the Oval Office. That is no way to conduct economic policy. And that's why we're seeing this sort of schizophrenic response in the economy.
And it's to a very precarious industry because if we look at the context of what cattle farmers are dealing with too, there's the screwworm issue that's coming over from Mexico. They've dealt with droughts. They've dealt with dwindling herds. I think anybody that even knows just a small fraction about what ranchers go through understands that for a lot of people, it's a 90-day window, but this really might be the tipping point for some folks.
So Trump was also asked today about his Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, intervening in the bond markets because the bond yields have been going up, which is, in shorthand, bad for the economy. The Treasury decided to buy these bonds back in order to lower the bond yields, but then they just went right back up. And here's what Trump said he might do about it in the future.
Did you direct Secretary Bessent to intervene in the bond market? Was
No,
that your idea?
not at all. No, he's a very capable man. He wanted to do it. He's very good at it. He has a good touch, very good natural touch for the bonds and interest, and he did that, yeah.
The yields have come back up since then. Have you talked to him about another type of intervention? Is that something he will be doing?
We have many types of intervention. That's one. The ultimate intervention is our military, and if we have to use that, we will.
Not sure what that's about.
He's going to bomb the bond market.
He's going to sick the military on the bond market. What is he talking about?
I don't know, honestly. But I think that right now, when I look at the economy and I look at what young people should be worried about, the national debt is a huge, huge issue. Donald Trump himself is responsible for 29% of the national debts. It accumulated under his watch. Now we pay $1 trillion per year just in the interest. That's going to continue to accumulate. And we're going to have to pay for that. My generation, you guys, it's really bad.
But we're going to be honest about the national debt. It is a bipartisan problem that requires a bipartisan
but who's responsible
solution.
for 29% of it?
Well,
yes,
a lot of people
problem.
are responsible, not just presidents. It's not just presidents because they signed the bills. Congress appropriates the money. If you look at it,
how much is Trump asking for a military?
Barack Obama in his 8 years added more to the debt, double more than George W. Bush
did.
He
added 16%.
Joe
Trump
Biden,
added 30,
in his
29%.
only term, added more than Donald Trump did in his first term. So this is a bipartisan problem. You want to pin it just on Donald Trump because that's what you do.
He said he was going to end the deficit on day one.
Real courage from both parties to tackle the problem. You can't just cut waste, fraud, and abuse. You can't just raise taxes on the rich.
Abuse. I thought Doge 249,000
They never said that it would eliminate
They said they would balance the deficit. Elon Musk said they were going to remove.
He said $2 billion. Then
he said $2 trillion.
$2 trillion.
Then he said
and they didn't go anywhere close to that.
The facts are right now we are spending enormously on the Iran war. They're asking for $1.6 trillion for our next military budget to make up for the failed missiles, the missiles that we're using on this failing war with Iran. It just kind of feels like this president and
we
prior
also have an
Republican
obligation
presidents
to NATO to get up to 5% of our GDP.
That's
and
not
even that
affecting the
number
national
would
debt
be
in this
less
way.
than 5% of our GDP. You can't have everything, Adam. Like, if you
Republican
want to do that on behalf of our allies, we have to actually spend money on defense.
I guess, Pete, I think you're right. Obviously, it is a bipartisan issue. But I also think that you will have to acknowledge that it's going to require some sacrifices. And so far, this administration has expressed zero interest in any sort of restraint in terms of spending. They added to the deficit last year with the big, beautiful bill. They want to add to the deficit more with this budget request for the DoD. They are not even thinking about where they can make significant and meaningful cuts to spending, which is going to be necessary in order to get this under control. I think it was Scott Besson who said, we're going to grow our way out of this. No one thinks we're going to grow our way out of this.
We can bomb our way out of this, I think.
We have to grow and cut our way out of this mess. Otherwise, we'll be here for a long time. Next for us, JD.
Wow, this debate really exposes the contradiction at the heart of the Republican argument on spending. For years, Republicans have branded themselves as the party of smaller government, lower spending, and fiscal responsibility. But when Donald Trump is actually in power, suddenly that urgency becomes a lot harder to find. And that's why Adam Mockler's argument lands here. Yes, the national debt is a bipartisan problem. Democrats have contributed to it. Republicans have contributed to it. Congress controls spending, and pretending one president created a $40 trillion debt by himself would obviously be ridiculous. But Donald Trump is the president right now. So when the conversation turns to what the government is spending today, you can't just yell, "What about Democrats?" and act like that settles the argument. Especially when this administration is spending enormously on the war with Iran while pushing for a massive military budget. And that's the contradiction Mockler was getting at. This might have been Mockler's strongest point of the entire discussion. Trump puts massive tariffs on imported beef. Prices become a problem. American consumers start feeling it. American ranchers are already struggling. And what's the big solution? Temporarily reduce the tariff pressure and bring in more foreign beef. Come on. You can understand why Mockler described this as Trump reversing his own policies and then declaring victory. Again, technically, he's right. But being bipartisan doesn't make Trump's contribution disappear. And it certainly doesn't mean the current president gets a free pass because previous presidents spent too much money too. If Republicans really believe the debt is an existential problem, then show us where the restraint is. Show us the difficult choices. Show us the spending cuts that apply to the priorities Republicans actually care about, not just programs helping ordinary Americans. Because small government cannot mean small government when working families need something and enormous government when defense contractors come knocking. That's not fiscal conservatism. That's choosing what you're willing to spend money on. And ultimately, that's what made this Abby Phillip panel so interesting. Mockler wasn't arguing that Democrats have clean hands on the debt. He was asking why MAGA wants everyone talking about everybody else's spending while Trump is sitting in the White House right now pushing policies that could add even more. So I want to know what you guys think. Is Adam Mockler right that Trump is creating economic problems, reversing course, and then declaring victory? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this debate, do me a favor and subscribe to Political Crossfire. It really helps the channel grow. I'll see you in the next one.